You and Your Money is brought to you by the Central Bank of the Bahamas, Doctors Hospital Health System, and Cable Bahamas Business Solutions.
Good evening and season's greetings. Welcome to You and Your Money. I'm your host for this evening's show, Javon Butler, and as usual, we thank you for joining us this evening. This evening, we are honored and privileged to have as our guest Mr. John Roll, the Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas, as we discuss the economic reset here in the Bahamas. Good evening, Governor Roll.
Good evening, Javon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Pleasure to have you here again, sir. So, Governor Roll, the International Monetary Fund, IMF, is projecting a growth rate of 5.9% globally, very strong for 2021, and 4.9% for 2022, according to their website. The global growth is projected to moderate to about to level off to about 3.3% over the medium term. There's also an ongoing concern of inflation risk being skewed to the upside and could materialize if pandemic-induced supply-demand mismatches continue longer than expected. How does this impact us as a nation, and what are the prospects for the Bahamian economy?
Well, what you just described is the world recovering from COVID-19, and that sort of puts it into context for the Bahamas, to the extent that we, as a tourism-dependent country, has experienced a slower startup of our recovery. So this year, 2021, the Bahamas is expected to grow in the 2 to 3% range. And next year, 2022, we could expect growth to reach as high as 8%. If we're lucky, slightly better. But the context is to recognize that we lost 16% of our GDP in 2020. And therefore, even with the growth that we're expecting this year and next year, it is still going to take the Bahamas until at least 2023 to be back to where we were in 2019. So that is very important. But in terms of the way things are trending now, there's been a rebound in the tourism, and so we've seen it in terms of the occupancy levels in the hotels, and we've seen it in terms of the inflows through the banks, and more people are back at work. But 2019 being the baseline means that there's still a lot more that's necessary in terms of getting everybody back to where they were.
Okay. And when we listen to the projected rise in oil prices in 2022, and we are heavily dependent on imports, do you project any short-term domestic consumer price inflation in the country?
We should certainly expect inflation, increased inflation. What the average Bahamian should understand is that the way we calculate inflation is based upon how we divide our spending up amongst various goods and services. So in the United States, for example, you have inflation that is being driven by goods. You also have food price inflation, but you also have a lot of a run-up in costs in the services sector. So we may not in the Bahamas, for example, see the one-for-one correspondence between the inflation in U.S. services and Bahamian services. But rest assured, insofar as food and other areas where there's a dependency on shipping, we would have some impact. Where we should be very guarded is to understand that the central banks in countries like the U.S. and other places, they're going to start to look at raising interest rates to control inflation, which is a way of saying they're trying to tune down the growth rate in those countries. And we want to be mindful that that doesn't sort of hinder what is still a recovering state for us, for tourism, because anything that, say, the U.S. Central Bank does to dampen American spending, we have to be mindful that that could have an unwelcome effect on the willingness or the ability of Americans to travel. What is working in our favor, though, is that people still have a lot of pent-up demand for travel, and therefore we still have a chance of staying ahead of the U.S. trends and perhaps be more concerned about how COVID-19 could have some undesired effects.
And you mentioned the central bank and increasing those interest rates to curb inflation. There are a lot of Bahamians who always ask about the prime rate, local rate. Do you see any increase in that rate due to this inflationary concern?
Inflation in the Bahamas is typically a product of what's happening on the outside. What is more of a concern for us when the cost of imported goods and services goes up is the hit that it takes on our foreign reserves, because we have to spend more US dollars for the same amount of goods that we are consuming. So global inflation would have more of an impact on our foreign exchange use. That is not something that our domestic tools would have much impact on in terms of reducing the spillover or flow through to the Bahamian context. So it's not going to influence Bahamian interest rate policy.
Okay, and you mentioned the increase of goods and having an impact on our foreign reserves. Your most recent, I think, was your quarterly review report that was put out. You talked to some strengths in the economy in terms of the growth in tourist numbers, the growth in construction, with the rebuilding, and one or two other areas. Could you just expand for our viewing audience where we are seeing growth in the economy right now?
Well, during the pandemic, most of the other sectors or parts of the economy held their own, and they continued to provide, good support, whether it was construction or the international financial services sector. So what we're experiencing now in terms of the turnaround is tourism coming back on stream. And so the year-on-year changes that we're seeing in the level of economic activities is largely the result of the recovery in tourism.
Okay. You mentioned the foreign reserves. So are you comfortable that the reserves are healthy and based upon all the variables that are happening around us globally?
Absolutely. Yeah, the reserves are at a very healthy level. Yeah. Today, the Bahamas has over $2 billion in foreign reserves. Okay. Those are still relatively record levels for the Bahamas. We were, at some point this year, I think, up to about $2.7 billion in reserves. But normally when you go between August and December of each year, which tends to be the seasonal time of the year when you get less tourism receipts, and we are spending more, businesses rebuilding inventories, we spend down on the reserves. So that's a normal trend. There's nothing worrying about that. We're at comfortable level to the extent that by the end of this year, it is likely that we will close out 2021 still with over $2 billion in foreign reserves. And we're going to go through the first half of the year, as we typically do, where the inflows from tourism are greater than whatever we're spending on imports, so the reserves will grow during the first half of the year. And we expect some reduction next year. What we're hoping for and projecting is that by the end of 2022, the Bahamas could have less foreign reserves than we ended this year. And that's because we expect that as Bahamians spend more and domestic activity picks up, it will be some use of the reserves, and that is something that is desired. So that there could be more spending going on, and we have the capacity to absorb it in the reserves.
Okay. Governor, we're going to take our first commercial break here. This is You and Your Money. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Dr. Wanda Rogers.
Hi, I'm Dr. Munish Sharma.
Hi, I'm Dr. Valencia Johnson,
Director of Ambulatory Services at Doctors Hospital.
I'm the Director of Imaging at Doctors Hospital.
I'm a pediatrician here at Doctors Hospital.
I am vaccinated against COVID-19.
I'm fully vaccinated against COVID-19.
I am fully vaccinated against COVID.
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
Join the Click is an initiative started by Cable Bahamas Business Solutions last year when we were trying to figure out how to help business leaders as well as consumers to stay connected. Working with Canoe, working with other partners, working with the government and My Gateway to help them to connect with customers who want to place orders and want to be able to do things in a digital way.
My Gateway. My Gateway is a groundbreaking portal through which clients can request and pay for government services online. We have 28 services. We expect to increase the number of services to a minimum of 200.
I love that we're helping the government and helping our citizens to be more efficient and to use their time more wisely.
I invite you to sign up for mygateway.gov.bs and let us make government work for you. Join the Click.
Sand Dollar is the new digital Bahamian dollar created by the Central Bank of the Bahamas. It's just like physical cash, but safer and more convenient. Plus, the various Sand Dollar enabled apps are secure and easy to use on any Android or iOS device. Use Sand Dollar for your personal and business transactions, whether by QR code, a short name, or even your Sand Dollar card. You can send and receive Sand Dollars safely with just a touch of a button. Sand Dollar, the digital Bahamian dollar.
Welcome back to You and Your Money. Our guest this evening is Mr. John Roll, the Governor of the Central Bank of the Bahamas. Governor, congratulations on the launch of the Sand Dollar. We note in particular the accolades from Bloomberg on the Bahamas being the first country to launch a central bank digital currency. What is the value of the Sand Dollar presently in circulation, and what are the next steps for the Sand Dollar?
In circulation today, we still have only about $300,000 dollars worth of Sand Dollars. And that is really reflecting the fact that we are still very early in this process. The significance of the Sand Dollar is that it's a payments rail or a payments infrastructure that will allow financial institutions to be able to reach their customers wherever they are and to be able to send and receive payments in Sand Dollars or to communicate